Don't Make Me Think is Steve Cook's book, one of the things you should start with. Rocket Science Made Easy, it's more about research, also by Steve Cook. Yeah, I think that could be enough for the start.
Cool. How many of you are in the Riga TechGirls community group? Okay, so now we're going to do a little candy. We'll ask Liga to share the books in the community, and for everybody else, you have to find a community on Facebook and join it. Thank you. Great, so one thing was about the community, but there also you see our hashtag. So once you're taking photos and tweeting about tonight, because we're not big enough, we're only 200. Well, not girls, we have boys as well, a lot of men here. Members and 100 people here, we want more. So do promote Riga TechGirls. But we have next speaker as well. Today is Alise. Woo! Alise is one of Riga TechGirls founders as well, a very active UX specialist, one of Infogram founders. And recently, Alise was also nominated in Forbes as 30, one of the top under 30. So, and Alise will be telling more about user experience, not so much in digital, but just generally where we have user experience in life, right?
We'll see.
We'll get there.
So. So UX tools. I'm gonna talk about UX tools, and I was planning how deep should I dig with this topic, and I came to the conclusion that I want to give you overview of the UX tools that exist that I use in my everyday life, in my everyday professional life. So it won't be so useful for professional UXers here. So raise a hand, who is UXer or designer? So you guys have a task, approach me at the networking or write me on Facebook or whatever, and give your favorite tools in whatever category I'm going to talk about. And if I've forgotten something, just share what tools are you using. Because my main goal here was to give intro in what user experience design as a profession is, what workflows probably are there, and so for someone who's a beginner, where to start, and ideally, if you have ever heard, for example, the word heat map, then you will be approximately able to map it in a whole arsenal of UX tools. So a little bit about me, 3 slides. As mentioned, I'm a co-founder of Infogram, and that is a Latvian startup, and it's a data visualization tool that has 3 million users, and we've created this Infogram for 5 years, and in all these, since the beginning of Infogram, I've participated in multiple iterations of the tool, and I've measured user reaction on different design decisions that we had. So I've gained some experience in UX field, but I started as a visual designer. I was a graphic designer at first, and my personal kind of a switch or flip to UX and my choice to narrow my specialization, I would probably describe this as my lack of courage in decision making. So I kind of questioned everything when I did, and if there weren't any answer like data-baked decision, then I just couldn't make it. So then I started doing more user research. I paid more attention on analytics, and I suddenly realized that I'm doing more of a user research part than enjoying the graphical part of it. And then when I realized that, I decided to grant this in theory, and I started my master studies in human-computer interaction. Who knows what human-computer interaction is? So, 5 5 people. That's, as I usually say, it's a scientific term for UX design or for design. Though it sounds like they're creating cyborgs there. So yeah, it took 2 years of study in Tallinn University, and it gave me, as I was looking for it, a theoretical grounding for different things I do in my everyday work. And I found out that there are different user research methods, and there are different frameworks, and a lot of things that I do, they actually have a name for it. And so, yeah, I put knowledge that I gained from internet, from blogs and Twitter, into more theoretical frame. And the third thing to mention about myself is that I'm part of Riga TechGirls, and I decided to join this initiative because I think it's really important to get more and more girls involved in IT. And I really try not to go into some stereotypes or gender topics. The main thing why I'm here is because I really like tech industry, and I think that a lot of girls would enjoy it too. And that's why I'm here today. I'm showing my profession, and I hope that some girls that are not involved in IT, they probably see UX as an opportunity in their careers. So back to UX and what it is. You can find multiple explanations what is UX design, multiple definitions. This one is from Wikipedia, and it's more or less about user satisfaction, usability, accessibility, and pleasure that users have while they're using your product. And logically, as you as a designer, you are looking for the ways how to create these digital products that will be satisfactory, usable, and accessible. So everything around this I consider as UX. And UX design actually is a really small part of all design disciplines that take care of these usable, accessible, and pleasant technologies. And as we see, user experience is a huge overlapping bubble of different small disciplines. And human-computer interaction is also there. Yeah, I will share these slides later. You can take a closer look at this. But here's my personal definition or what user experience design is for me. And I see this as a consciousness of design. And I believe that all our designers' intentions to create better products, and if they are keeping in mind end user in their design process, that there's only gradation of good or bad design that we can achieve, but all attempts in making better products we can celebrate this as a user experience design. And it doesn't matter what role do you have in team. You can be project manager, you can be developer or designer. If you constantly question your work, if you think about end user, if you think about user needs, and for example, if you're a developer, you can think of how fast your work will load, and what circumstances or what environments user is using your work. And there are some things that you can take care of, but if you keep user in mind, then it will make better work than if you don't. So I would encourage to just approach this kind of definition, because I know sometimes people think that if you have a UXer in a team, then a lot of UX problems will be solved just automatically. But as Liga said, also it's not a one person's job to create good products. It's a team sports. So yeah, I encourage everyone to just think about users, and everything will be better then. And the structure of this presentation is not a one common workflow, because there are so many workflows, and they vary from the size of the project, type of the project, but more or less in all design or project management workflows, there will be these steps: research, sketching, prototyping, testing, collaboration, documentation, and analytics. And I try to kind of make this tool overview around these steps of the project management or project design. And I will share 3 tools in each category that I've used or I recommend to use, but as I said, there are so many more, so feel free to share them. So yeah, I won't take into workflows, and that's not a sequence that usually is considered to be a design workflow, because all these steps, ideally you repeat them, you test before, you test when you have ideas, you test when you have prototype, you test when you launch the product. So it's not a sequence. So usually the first part of every design project is the research. And no matter what research tool you choose, the main goal is to gather information that is in this domain that you're working in, and to find insights that will shape the future product that you're working on, and to get some overview of the thing that you do. And usually I use these 3 research tools or approaches, and I always start with the online research. That's the easiest thing that we can do if you have an internet. So you can research competitors, you can research other tools that are used by the same users. You can also find approximate understanding of who are users of the product. And then these insights that you get in online research, you can use in user interview to specify some things. And the last thing mentioned here is the card sorting. So card sorting, I usually combine it with interviews, but it's something visual that you can use in the interview format, and you can sort different things. For example, you have functionality of the website, and you want to find out hierarchy of these features that you want to put in the website. So you ask interviewer to kind of prioritize these features that you have on the cards. So it's just a visual material to get the interview going. And you can use card sorting for different things. Then when you get insights from the research, you somehow want to think visual, as I do it usually, and sketch some first ideas. For this, the best thing for me, I think, it's pen and paper, and not just any paper, dot grid paper perfectly. So just sketch out all quick ideas that you have. This step usually should be quick and dirty, because you are just, that's one milestone in the design process, and you just write down everything you found in the research. And you can use whatever tool. It can be digital, it can be physical. One tool that I also use in this process, I use mind mapping. And you can mind map also on a paper, but you can use some digital tools. There's a screenshot of Poggle. So you group all findings into groups, like problems, some alternatives or competitors, user needs. And when you are further in the design process, you can always look back at this first step and see if your findings are still there. Then, when you have some findings and some ideas and short list of solutions that you probably have come up with, you do prototyping. And one thing to remember about prototyping, that there are different fidelities of the prototype. One, the lowest fidelity is paper prototyping, or the sketching thing. And it actually, when you are like professionally working in a big company, it might seem a little silly if you the whole thing, the thing that you do whole workday is just paper prototyping. You got papers, you rearrange them, and then you bring some users, and you ask use pieces of paper like it's an actual app. And often it's really difficult for the user to actually imagine this as a working application. And so you have to remember that the lower fidelity is, the more it's required from a user to imagine how this would work. But it's really kind of recommended to test in early stages of design, so it's also really valuable to test paper prototypes. Then when you have some sketches or some prototypes, it's a really good idea to validate your ideas with the real users. And again, it doesn't matter how high or low fidelity of the prototype is, you can use different testing types. And I've grouped the three kind of testing directions, and it can be remote testing if you want to gather bigger data, because you don't have to like select 5 users in the same room, but you can approach some online tools. One of them is user testing, and I've used this in my work. So it's you write a script for the test, and you send out it to online community whose job is to test different things, and they go to your website, they go through your script, and they record the feedback. You hear how they are using your service, and then you get the valuable feedback. In the middle, there is a screen capturing that is done by one Infogram user. User was sitting with me in the same room. I gave some tasks, and I recorded how these tasks were done. And afterwards, you can interpret how these tasks were done. You can see a face of the user and see how the user reacts on the different tasks from scenario. And another thing is another approach is a test in the lab, where also you sit next to the user or in a different room. You give some scenario, and then so you give one task, and you don't give a scenario, but user himself explores the website, and you can see how quickly he does it. One really important part of every project or product development is paying attention to collaboration or task management. And it's sometimes neglected, and it's really difficult if you work as a freelancer, for example, and you jump from one project to another. Then all tools that different teams use, you have to adapt or re-adapt them. And if you have some new person in the team, then they also bring their own tools. So this might seem as not so important part of the design process, but I recently discovered that this basically defines how smooth and quick the whole process is. So I've shared 3 tools. The one that's in the middle, I use it the most. So it's altogether a prototype tool. It's a collaboration tool. It's also a task management tool, and it's useful to explore. Another tool is a Trello. That's the third one. So you basically put all tasks that you have, and you change the status of tasks, and all members of the team can comment on these tasks and mark the status of them. So also, important part of every design process is to communicate all findings that you have and leave all findings that you have in different stages of design. And what I usually use in my design process is making presentations. After every design phase, I make a presentation of what I've done before, what findings that we have, what we've agreed on, what are the sketches or mock-ups at that state, and then we move forward, and then we look back again on these presentations. And the part of these presentations is usually screen flow or the map of the whole screens, of the whole interactions. And it's also really important to see the whole big picture of the tool. And again, Envision is also used in documentation. When the project is done, I leave comments for developers and graphic designers on the mock-ups of design. Then analytics, something that we've heard already today. But the main thing about analytic tools is that in comparison to user interviews, when you interview 5, 10, or 15 users, you can do this with all users of your website or selected group. But the strongest part of every analytics tool is the big data. And you can analyze existing public or launched product or products in the late design phases. This is really useful also in redesign. So the first, Optimizely, is an A/B testing tool. And A/B testing is a testing of 2 different versions of any website, and you can test one assumption that you have about your website. For example, title of the page, and you can create 2 versions of the title and see which one gets more clicks or conversions. In the middle, there's a heat map of the website, and I used the Crazy Egg tool for it. There are different tools for heat mapping, scroll mapping. Scroll mapping shows how low users scroll your website. And one tip about all these tools, I recommend to explore trial period that they have. For Crazy Egg, I've tested several websites, and I signed up only, for example, 7 days of the trial period that they have, and always put notifications when I have to unsubscribe. But the site that I've tested, the visibility or the traction is really good, so I get insights really quickly. But the critics, my personal critics to heat maps, is that they always show you existing layouts or designs that you already have kind of in mind. If you put a red big button in the middle of the page, then users will always click on this red button. It's really hard to interpret or actually get some actionable feedbacks from the heat mapping. But there are some things that you can probably use if your marketing team says that this section is really important. And on the bottom of our web page, you can show data how few users scrolled to the end of the web page, and propose to make it shorter or to put some irrelevant information or less important information. And Google Analytics, which is free, you might need some help in the setup process of the Google Analytics, but it also gives the basic overview of how your website is doing, and also some insights how users can find like basic functionality in your website. And there was a question about books. I haven't included slides about books, but from these tools you can find deeper information and where can you read about UX more. And one of my favorite resources is UXPin, which is the online tool for prototyping and collaboration. And a lot of online tools, they have really strong content marketing blogs, and UXPin is one of those cases. So they have, I think, more than 100 books on user experience, and really, really important and interesting topics like prototyping, basics of wireframing, like usability and accessibility, like all hot topics that we have in UX. They usually release new ebook on this topic. In the middle, there's a good UI blog that I've discovered for some reason only recently, but it really helps me to use examples and tips of usability shared there as argument in every discussion that I have with designers or project managers. There's a compilation of, again, more than 100 tips how to improve usability of your website, and there's example how you should do things and how you shouldn't. For example, put all information in 5 columns, or you use just 1 column, or give recommendations instead of multiple choices. So different visual, quick tips how to improve efficiency and usability of your website. And some tips have actually evidence-based tests and some data how this tip improved website performance. And the last one is UX tools, which is a comparison of different web tools available for designers. And they compare price and platforms and different features. They also have section for books, which is a compilation or like a short list of the most popular books that there are. Like Don't Make Me Think and Design for Everyday Things. These books are there. So you could actually go to the last link instead of coming to this meetup. And lastly, there are many events that you can attend. I've shared here the closest to us. There's a UX and UI meetup happening here in Mill. The last meetup was in November, but as founder of UI UX Meetups Liga, said that in March they will be back. And in the middle again, Liga's event UX conference. Then there's a World Usability Day in November. And in Tallinn, they organize Usability Day conference. And it's the university that I studied in. And so it's also a recommended event if you're interested in user experience design. But there are many UX conferences in Europe, in the whole world. I've been to Lisbon UX conference, I can recommend it too. Future of Web Design, there's a conference in London. So yeah, just there are many events here in Riga, but if you go, you can research different UX conferences in Europe. So that was the last slide, but the side note about UX tools is that there isn't right or wrong tool that we can use, and there are different tools we can use in different projects, and size of the projects, and in different teams there are different people using different tools. The main thing is what you want to achieve, and it's not necessarily the whole team using the tool that you're using. But just make sure that you think about user needs, then we have a better gradation of a better designs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alise. Do you have any questions? Anyone? No questions? Yeah?
Somebody has to ask a question. UX seems like quite obvious thing to do actually, whether you develop web page, application, or whatever digital product. Why do you think people are not always doing UX? Like, what are the reasons why people skip UX as a thing?
Yeah, it's really hard to distinguish where UX starts and where it ends, and which parts of our design process is UX. Like when you think of content and where to place it, it's kind of UX. Maybe we can define UX as advocating user needs, and then what other needs do we have in design project? And sometimes business needs. It's our personal assumptions of how things should be, and we often choose to build products that kind of serve business needs instead of user needs. There's also term dark pattern that is a common thing when you choose business needs instead of user needs. So you kind of hide some notifications that say how much things are cost, or you put red buttons where users don't think and just click and buy stuff. So it's a dark pattern that design kind of guides you into business needs instead of designer needs. And yeah, I think it's it depends on design team and how important our user needs for each individual who designs stuff.
Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
So, when do you think, for kind of people who don't have UX specialty, when do they need to bring in a UX designer, and what else do they need to have in order to make the most of that kind of interaction?
Yeah, well, as I shared, my definition of UX design is when every person on a team is kind of tends to create better products or think about users or user needs or invest some time into research or finding answers for their decisions. So if all members on the team are kind of conscious about the importance of design, that it's fine. You don't have to have the special role UX designer in your team. But the more complex and the bigger projects get, I think it's helpful if there's one person who is UX designer and who guides research and development process and reminds and questions all important questions that are in user experience design. So I think it matters how big project is, and if a company can afford one person who's only user experience designer. As my background is, I started in startups. Often in a startup there is no designer on the team. There's a technical co-founder, there's the business developer, and there's sometimes a freelance designer. So nobody asks any opinion from a user experience designer. And yeah, if the company is bigger, then it's a good way how to improve your process.
I have a question. What is your goddamn I love my job moment when you work as UX specialist?
When I switched from graphic design and from offline design disciplines to online world, I was really impressed by the scale of your work, by the speed of the feedback you can have. An infogram is used in almost all countries in the world where the internet is available, and you work on some feature the whole day, and it's launched in the evening, and you know that the next morning you will see that 3 million users have used that, and you get instant feedback of how are they doing. So I can't imagine any other job that has this connection with their end users.
Thank you.